Over the past 30 years, China has been the world's fastest growing economy. From 1948 until 2022, USA's GDP, which essentially measures its economic output, grew annually by 3.14%. But in the last 40 years, China has seen its annual GDP grow 3 times faster than the US's, something which is truly remarkable. The size of China's army by active personnel has now overtaken the United States and is now the largest in the world. You already know that China is a global superpower, but have you ever wondered why China became a superpower? It wasn't that long ago that China endured one of the world's worst man-made disasters in human history. Mao Zedong, chairman of the Chinese Communist Party or CCP at the time, wanted to transform China from an agricultural economy to one which was a communist-based society. The CCP abolished private farming. Here, food production and food distribution would all be centralized, but their lack of expertise was evident. The CCP mandated unproven agricultural techniques from so-called experts from the Soviet Union. The CCP ordered the execution of so-called pests, which included animals like sparrows. Yes, these kinds of sparrows, because they ate some of the crops, and millions of farmers transitioned away from farming into the iron and steel production industries. Now, all of these factors contributed to inefficient crop yields because crops did not grow as effectively, and those that did were destroyed by swarms of locusts because remember, sparrows were killed and that ecosystem was damaged. Now, all of these factors contributed to the Great Chinese Famine. From 1959 to 1961, over 30 million people starved to death in China. In modern history, this was China's lowest point. So how did it all change? In 1978, after another year of disastrous harvest, in the tiny village of Shaogang, 18 farmers met in a mud hut to sign a secret agreement. According to the secret agreement, instead of farming just for the collective, each family would get its own plot of land to farm. A family that did well and produced a lot of food could keep some of that food. You might be thinking, yeah, it's just a primitive form of capitalism. It's not exactly rocket science. And you'd be right, but you do need to factor in the context. China in 1978 was heavily communist, and even the thought of trying something which was based on capitalism was punishable by death. As part of the contract, the farmers agreed that if any of them were arrested or even executed, the others in the agreement would take care of their children until they reached the age of 18. While the stakes were high, the fruits of their labour were evident. Their harvest after just one season was greater than the 5 previous years combined. However, the large harvest caught the attention of local government officials and it eventually made its way up to the CCP. But something surprising happened. CCP leader Deng Xiaoping, who came into power following Mao's death, decided not to execute them. Instead, he wanted China's economy to be revamped, and in fact, he actually held up the farmers as role models for the rest. This was the turning point that changed China's fortunes. There were many factors which all worked together during the economic reforms within China of 1978, which led to its economic growth. Deng's vision of China was a socialist market economy. By dividing once government land into private property, Deng encouraged the formation of private businesses. Under Deng's new policy, farmers were allowed to exercise control of their property, as long as they sold a contracted portion of their crops to the government. Farmers became more efficient with their efforts, or labour in economic talk. And this saw more people leave agriculture and enter new industries which were no longer controlled by the states, for example manufacturing. Before 1978, 80% of workers were all in agriculture, but by 1994, this number had dropped down to 50%. Business owners were eager to increase profits because it meant that they could keep more of the money for themselves. So they devoted more of their business revenue to improving the performance of their businesses. They became free. Well, not completely free, but more free. Business managers were also given more autonomy. To incentivize high quality work, managers were now allowed to give out bonuses. And in December of 1978, Deng announced his open door policy, which allowed foreign companies to set up shop in China. Cumulative foreign direct investment before 1978 was negligible. But by 1984, it had nearly reached $100 billion. This foreign money was used to build factories in China and link China to international markets. China lent the US money and developed a very interesting trade relationship with the United States. Essentially, the Chinese manufactured consumer goods in a very cost-efficient way, and loaned the US money to buy them. The Chinese were building up their savings account using the world's reserve currency, the US dollar. The world's richest country, however, the United States, was willing to get into debt to finance consumption. As a result of better technology and improved infrastructure, output from Chinese workers increased. But the reason why China's economy grew so much essentially comes down to two words: productivity growth. As the state intervened less, people were more incentivized to produce more goods and services. In spite of China's tremendous progress, it still needs to address both domestic and international challenges. China's handling of a very famous virus that we're all aware of has received heavy criticism. Its healthcare infrastructure has been deemed inadequate to handle large numbers of elderly people who have not been vaccinated. Not only are tensions high with the United States as well as India, but they're reaching boiling point with Taiwan. And as a result, foreign investors are becoming more concerned about whether they should invest in China. If China did invade Taiwan, it wouldn't be too surprising to see Chinese goods and services boycotted, the same way we saw Russian goods and services boycotted by the West after their invasion of Ukraine. It's undeniable that Deng's leadership has guided China to where it is today, with Xi Jinping picking up the baton. At the time Deng came into power, 90% of the population were living in poverty. Today, it's around 1%. China's rise from poverty to power came from 18 farmers secretly meeting in a mud hut. Even though China faces many challenges today, it's undeniable that its story of progress is truly remarkable. Thank you for watching.